me, morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
When you need your sports center now,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
I'm going to bring back up as president that bipartisan border security bill and make sure that it is brought to my desk so I can sign it into law.
I have a daughter. I can't even imagine her having less rights than I had when I was at her age.
I love it. This young generation is coming around and they're realizing that their future's on the line and they're voting for President Donald J. Trump.
Hello, everybody. I'm Weijia Jiang in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. We are following developing news out of Los Angeles, where the fates of Eric and Lyle Menendez, the two brothers who have been serving a life sentence for killing their parents back in 1989, are about to be announced by the Los Angeles County DA. When that press conference begins, we will take it to you live. But first, with less than 2 weeks to go until Election Day, close to 30 million Americans have already cast their ballots. We'll take a closer look at the numbers and what they could mean for the candidates. On the campaign trail, Vice President Kamala Harris is seeking to boost her campaign tonight with more star power. She will hold a Get Out the Vote rally in Georgia tonight alongside former President Barack Obama and the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Last night at a CNN town hall, she seized on claims from former President Trump's chief of staff that he praised Hitler. Listen.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Former President Trump goes on the defensive against his former White House ally on social media, calling John Kelly, quote, a total degenerate. On the campaign trail, Trump is out west today holding rallies in the battleground states of Arizona and Nevada. Nicole Killian and Caitlin Huey-Burns are tracking both campaigns for us. Nicole is following the vice president in Georgia, and Caitlin is with the former president in Tempe, Arizona. Nicole, great to be with you. Tonight, the vice president will be joined by former President Obama and Bruce Springsteen in Georgia. And also, we have learned that Beyonce will join her on the trail tomorrow in Texas. What kind of impact does this celebrity influence bring to the campaign?
Well, I don't know about the Beyonce impact because that is pretty powerful, as well as Taylor Swift, who has come out in support of the vice president. But look, there's some debate about whether these celebrity endorsements and appearances really matter. At the end of the day, I think what the campaign is trying to do is really energize voters, get them out here, get them hyped, if you will, to vote, to tell their neighbors to vote if they haven't already done so. This is really kind of more of a motivational boost, if you will. We heard from the vice president earlier today, and she says that she believes, whether it's Bruce Springsteen or the former president being out here tonight, that this is really showcasing the breadth of support that she has for her campaign. So, of course, any campaign and any candidate is going to milk that for what it's worth.
Yeah, no one's going to say no to Beyonce if they want to come and support you on stage.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So at this point, Nicole,
no.
Millions of voters have already cast their ballots. And I wonder who the Harris campaign is trying to reach with tonight's event. If there's any one group in particular, or really anybody that's watching.
Yeah, well, really here in Georgia, this is a critical part of the Harris campaign's Sun Belt strategy, and the former president's for that part too, right? I mean, look, the former president who was just here last night wants to flip this state back into the red column. But in terms of Democrats, they saw those gains made when President Biden flipped the state for the first time in 30 years back in 2020, held the state again with the election of Senators Ossoff and Warnock, who again had to run back in 2020. 2022 multiple times in runoff races to continue to hold that seat. So Democrats would really like to keep this state in their column as well. But what is critical when you're running in a state like Georgia is you really have to turn out a multicultural coalition, primarily one centered on African-American voters, which make up about a third of the electorate in this state. And there has been some concern that the vice president has lost some ground with black voters, but some of the voters we talked to here today say they aren't concerned about that. Take a listen.
If you look at the turnouts that continue to come out, when she was just at Lakewood here previously, when she was just at Dr. Jamal Bryant's church, the turnout is massive. We know what we're fighting for.
So many younger people are misinformed, and they're misinformed because they don't take the time out to learn the political system.
So that gentleman I talked to at the very end, I asked him in particular about support from African-American males, because that is a demographic that we know the vice president has been actively courting. We know former President Obama has made some very direct appeals to black men not to sit on the sidelines and to back the vice president. And so what this gentleman told me is that while he is somebody who is enthusiastic about the Harris-Walz ticket, he did acknowledge that there are some African-American males who have some reservations. He's particularly concerned about young African-American males who he feels may, to a certain extent, be getting misinformation in terms of social media, and that's a big concern that he has in terms of the type of messaging that they're getting, whether or not that's kind of coloring their views of the candidates and the campaigns. But anyway, certainly a critical demographic to watch going forward.
And Caitlin, I want to turn to you now because you are in Arizona with former President Trump, and you've been talking with canvassers who are door knocking there, trying to get people to vote for the ballot measure that would enshrine abortion rights into the state's constitution. What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, Ouija, there's a really interesting dynamic here in Arizona. Our CBS News polling shows Trump with a slight edge over Harris here, but there's also majority support for that ballot measure. And so the question is, does that translate to support for Kamala Harris? Our polling shows that that's not necessarily the case, because 1 in 5 voters in our poll say that they're voting for the ballot measure and also for Donald Trump. But that hasn't stopped these canvassers that we followed yesterday, who are really hoping to turn out voters for the measure and in turn turn out voters up and down the ballot. Listen to what they had to say.
I'm passionate about it. I have 2 daughters that are, of the age where they want to start families, and just the stories that I've heard when sitting tables and talking to people, getting signatures, they've shared a lot of really horrific stories about what they've had to go through.
I have a daughter. I can't even imagine her having less rights than I had when I was at her age.
Caitlin Huey-Burns and Nicole Killian on the trail, thank you so much. We want to take you right now to Los Angeles, where the fates of Eric and Lyle Menendez, the 2 brothers who have been serving a life sentence for killing their parents in 1989, are about to be announced by the Los Angeles County DA. Listen.
Jose Menendez and niece Karen Vandermolen and Katie's niece. They're all here with us. Also with us here is Brock Lunsford. He's the Assistant Head Deputy for the Post-Litigation Conviction Unit. And Nancy Cervier, who is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the resentencing unit. Let me begin by telling you that this is a case where we've had many people in this office spend a great deal of time reviewing the case. I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were molested. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately and that they were in fact molested. I have to tell you that after a very careful review of all the arguments that were made for people on both sides of this equation, I came to a place where I believe that under the law, resentencing is appropriate, and I am going to recommend that to a court tomorrow. What that means in this particular case is that we're going to recommend to the court that the life without the possibility of parole be removed and that they will be sentenced for murder, which, because there are 2 murders involved, that will be 50 years to life. However, because of their age, under the law, since they were under 26 years of age at the time that these crimes occurred, they will be eligible for parole immediately. The teams that have worked on this, on the resentencing side of it, have spent literally probably hundreds of hours by now looking at this case. These cases were originally presented on the habeas side of it, which I'll explain in a moment what that is, last year, and then the request for a prosecutor-initiated resentencing occurred earlier this year. And there have been people in this office working in these cases from the very beginning, as well as many other cases that we have. The reason why I'm here today and why I came in front of all of you about 10 days ago is because there was a more recent documentary about the case that again brought a tremendous amount of public attention. And we know there have been other documentaries, so this is not the first, this is the more recent one. And frankly, our office got flooded with requests for information. And even though this case was already scheduled to be heard in late November, I decided to move this forward because, quite frankly, we did not have enough resources to handle all the requests. And one of the things that I thrive to do in this office is to be very transparent in everything that we do. In this case, we review the prison files. And you have to understand that the way the process works, when you're talking about a resentencing under the law, it really focuses not necessarily on what the original crimes were, but it focuses on, has the person been rehabilitated, number one, and number two, can they be released safely into the community? Under that rubric, since I've been in office, we have resentenced over 300 people, including 28 for murder. Only 4 have reoffended. If that was a regular recidivism rate in this country, we would be the safest nation in the world, but we know that it's not. In fact, somewhere between 40 and 50% of the people that go to prison reoffend and get rearrested. And that's why we have so many problems. However, when you look at the case of the Menendez brothers, you see 2 very young people. One was 19 and the other one was 21 when they committed these horrible acts. And I want to underline, they were horrible acts. There is no excuse for murder. And I will never imply that what we're doing here is to excuse that behavior. Because even if you get abused, the right path is to call the police, seek help. But I understand also how sometimes people get desperate. We often see women, for instance, that have been battered for years, and sometimes they will murder their abuser out of desperation. And I do believe that the brothers were subjected to a tremendous amount of dysfunction in the home and molestation. But they went to prison for life without the possibility of parole, which meant that certainly under the law at that time, they had no hopes of ever getting out. They could have done what many other people do, which is basically said, you know what, I'm here for the rest of my life, so I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to misbehave, I'm going to join gangs, I'm going to live the life of the prison. But they never did that. To the contrary, even though they didn't think that they would ever be let free, they engaged in a different journey. A journey of redemption and a journey of rehabilitation. And often the people that begin their journey of rehabilitation and redemption in prison is often very internal in what they do, and one of our lawyers pointed out this today, is usually the path is people try to further their education, do things for self-improvement, which the brothers have done, by the way. But it's more unique or less usual, I guess, when people not only do that, but they also begin to engage in ways to make life for others better. And in this case, the brothers have been doing so for a very long time, creating groups to deal with how to address untreated trauma, creating groups to deal with other inmates that have physical disabilities and may be treated differently. Even in one case, Lyle negotiating for other inmates as to the conditions that they live under during prison. And all this was done by two young people, now they're not as young, that had no hopes of ever getting out of prison. They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and if the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, they will be released accordingly. I must underline, however, this case will be filed in court tomorrow. The final decision will be made by the judge. Court has to agree with my conclusion that they deserve to be resentenced. It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing the resentencing. And they have a right to do so. And we encourage those that disagree with us to speak, and the court is the appropriate place to do it. We certainly feel we're very sure not only that the brothers have rehabilitated and that they will be safe to be reintegrated in our society, but that they have paid their dues, not only for the crimes that they committed, but because of all the other things they have done to improve the life of so many others. So, again, we will be filing for resentencing tomorrow. We're seeking that they would be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, as opposed to life without the possibility of parole, which is they currently have. That means that they would have 50 years to life because there were two murders. But because of the age upon which they were convicted, under 26, under current law, that means they're eligible for youthful parole. I think there is also important to have some introspection today, because I think that often, for cultural reasons, we don't believe victims of sexual assault, whether they're women, whether they're men. We saw in our first trial, which, by the way, they were tried twice. The first trial hung, meaning the jury could not come to a conclusion, and in fact, about half of the jury wanted to convict them of manslaughter, which, if that were have been the case, they would have been off prison a long time ago. And then there was a second trial, and then they were convicted of murder with special circumstances, which led to the life without the possibility of parole. But it's salient to understand that our own implicit and sometimes explicit bias around sexual abuse and sexual assaults often leads us to severe injustices in our community. And I want to speak to those that are victims of sexual assault now, whether you're a man or a woman. Know that we're here for you. If you're a victim of sexual assault in this community, and by that we're talking about LA County, not just LA City, you can come for help. Whether you're prepared to prosecute or not, we will be here for you. We have services for you. And if you're prepared to move forward with the prosecution, we will evaluate it as we do any other case. And if we believe that the evidence is there to present a credible case in front of a jury that can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, we will proceed accordingly. You do not have to suffer alone. You don't have to keep it to yourself. And help is here unconditionally. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish because I know there's tremendous amount of interest from the Spanish media, and I know that there are going to be other speakers today, and then we're going to open it up for questions. Primero que nada, quiero dar las gracias a todos por estar aquí hoy. Estamos hablando del caso de los hermanos Menendez. Este fue un caso donde dos hermanos, uno de 19 y uno de 21 años, asesinaron a sus padres más de 3 décadas atrás. Los muchachos fueron condenados por asesinato y llevan en la prisión alrededor de 35 años. Este fue un caso que tuvo mucha atención pública cuando sucedió y indudablemente tiene mucha atención pública hoy cuando vemos esta habitación como está llena. La razón por la que nosotros estamos buscando que la Corte reevalúe la sentencia original.
We have been listening to Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon. He has recommended resentencing for Eric and Lyle Menendez and says that they will now be eligible for parole immediately. The DA also said that the brothers have paid their debt to society. The two brothers have spent nearly 35 years behind bars for the first-degree murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989. Eric was 18 years old at the time of the killing. Lyle was 21. Their case was the media sensation of the early 90s. And during their first trial, evidence was introduced that Jose had sexually abused these two sons. Now, that case ended in a mistrial. During their second trial, much of that evidence was excluded by the judge. And that trial led to the conviction of the brothers and life sentences without the possibility of parole. But last year, the defense filed a petition with the court saying they have new evidence. The case will now go before a Los Angeles Superior Court judge who will make the decision to formally resentence both men and decide if the brothers should, in fact, be released from prison. And the date of this future court hearing is to be determined. I want to bring in now CBS News legal contributor and Loyola law professor Jessica Levinson from Los Angeles. Jessica, thanks so much for being with us. So walk us through what happens from here, because the DA made very clear that even though this was his recommendation, that ultimately a judge had to agree with him. Ultimately, it would be up to the court. So tell us how that process unfolds.
Well, that's exactly right. Typically speaking, a judge would defer to the district attorney. Again, this is a district attorney, not him, but whose office originally tried this case. They have access to all of the evidence. They have access to the new claims. They were obviously the ones who received this petition for resentencing. So typically speaking, not that it's a rubber stamp, but it's a pretty high bar for a judge to say, no, I don't agree with you. I just want to flag two things for people to remind us all that not only are we talking about the Menendez brothers, and that means this case is not typical, but there's other things happening here. One, this is a DA who's up for re-election in 12 days. And so the electoral calendar is looming pretty large over the legal timeline as well. If we had a judge who decided not to make a decision until after the election, you could potentially see a new DA, because Gascon is about 30 points behind, make a different recommendation. So we need to watch for that as well. The other thing that's unique here is DA Gascon said very clearly there was dissent in the ranks, that there might be members of his office who go to court tomorrow and say, Judge, I don't agree with you. Typically, once a DA says, we think, Judge, there should be resentencing, there is agreement in the office. So I think those two things, the election, the dissent in the office that we understand could go public tomorrow, I think those are reasons why a judge might say, hold on a second, whereas typically that's not the case.
So, Jessica, is there a chance that the judge says, I want to hold off until after the election, given the potential political motivation behind this recommendation?
So that's such a good and important question. And I think, it backs into kind of what is the DA's motivation here. I think for a judge, they really should just be guided by the facts that are presented to them, not the possibility that there will be somebody else in office. So look, is the judge a person who understands that there might be a new DA who has a new philosophy? Absolutely. But I think having a judge explicitly say, let's wait to make sure that the person who holds this office for the next 4 years agrees, I don't think we're going to see that. I do, again, want to emphasize, typically speaking, a judge will say yes to this type of DA recommendation. I added some complexity, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And the DA has said very explicitly that these two individuals, Eric and Lyle, would be eligible for parole immediately. And that is a possibility here.
Jessica, I want to turn now to the niece of Jose Menendez, but stick with us because I have more questions for you, but she is speaking right now at the podium. Let's take a listen.
Be heard, and that Lyle and Eric can begin to heal from the trauma of their past. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
I believe Jose Menendez is going to say a few words.
This is the niece of Kitty Menendez.
I'm sorry.
Joan Vandermolen.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming. We are here today because District Attorney Gascon has taken a brave and compassionate step forward by recommending resentencing for my cousins, Eric and Lyle. And we wish to offer our deepest gratitude to DA Gascon. This decision is not just a legal matter. It is a recognition of the abuse my cousins endured, and we are grateful for the DA's leadership in putting justice over politics. We know this wasn't an easy decision, but is the right one. This is about truth, justice, and healing. It is time for Lyle and Eric to come home. And I ask all of you to join us in this fight for justice. We stand united in our hope and in our gratitude. Together we can make sure that Eric and Lyle receive the justice they deserve and finally come home. Thank you again to District Attorney George Gascon for his courage and leadership. This step gives us all hope that truth will finally be heard and Eric and Lyle can begin to heal from the horrors of their past. We hope this will also shed light and increase awareness and help others who have been victimized by sexual violence. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are grateful for everyone's support.
Is there anyone else speaking?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, and I apologize. I'm reading notes here, and I'm trying to understand all the notes. Yes, ma'am.
I want to bring back a CBS News legal contributor and Loyola law professor, Jessica Levinson from Los Angeles. Jessica, the DA said that he was going to reconsider this case anyway. It was on the books for late November. But he expedited it because he received a flood of requests and comments from the public. Now, you know as well as I do, right now, if you go to Netflix, there's a documentary about these brothers. There is a dramatic show about them, a miniseries. And I wonder if you think that had an impact on what we just saw from the DA.
Yes, in all candor, I don't know if it has the same impact if we weren't looking at an election again in 12 days. Public pressure for any type of elected official, particularly those facing tough re-election battles, tends to fall very differently right before an election than right after an election. I'm not saying that this isn't the decision that DA Gascon would have made if he is reelected, which looks frankly unlikely. This is a different decision, but I think it's the public pressure plus where we are in the electoral calendar. We have to remember that when we decide to elect these officials, judges, DAs, et cetera, that we're putting them under public pressure by definition. One thing I want to flag for the audience is we need to be very careful tomorrow to listen to exactly what the DA's office asked for with respect to resentencing. I'm hearing that there's some complexity if he's asking for 2 first-degree murder sentences, but to be had without the possibility of parole, that may actually not be legal under California law. So we need to hear if he's talking about 2 first-degree murders, if he's talking about 2 second-degree murders, or if there's some change overnight and it's a murder and a manslaughter. I know it sounds hyper-technical, but that will hinge on whether or not the recommendation here, frankly, is legal under California law, and whether, as we just talked about, a judge is likely to say, yes, go ahead, or if a judge will say, I'm sorry, go back.
So basically, we don't know if the charges have been changed, right? Because that is what's going to determine the maximum sentence for these 2 brothers.
Exactly right. And of course, all I'm flagging here, because there was a lot of apparently dissent within the office until the last moment, is that we really need to hear what is said in the filing. What are the charges when DA Gascon goes to court, not a press conference, but when he goes into court and says, here are the charges, and this is what I suggest as a resentence, that obviously has to fall within California law. And it doesn't mean that he couldn't go back. It means that the more time that goes by, as we were talking about before, the more it's likely that somebody else may be making this recommendation.
So I imagine it's very difficult to answer the question that I think most people in the public are wondering, which is how soon could Eric and Lyle be free? Because the DA said that they are immediately eligible for parole. But according to what you just laid out, we don't know if that's true.
Well, I guess all I'm saying, and I know this is so annoying, but the job of a lawyer trying to unpack this is to say this is a little bit more complex than maybe we might think or even for some people hope. So what we have to look at is exactly what is requested in terms of the charges brought and the resentencing. Then we need to look at when the judge decides to hold the hearing and if the judge decides to rule from the bench. I know all of that is a terribly annoying answer. Look at about 30 days. That's what I'm telling people. Look at about 30 days for a judge to hold the hearing, review the evidence, look at the charges, and potentially make a decision.
Jessica, it is not annoying at all. It is critical for you to set the expectations because there is so much interest in this case. So thank you for all of your insight. All right, we're going to get back to politics next on America Decides because both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are courting Latino voters. Ahead, we'll analyze the significance of these voters and what some believe is the most important battleground state of all. You're streaming CBS News 24/7.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 Hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
With Election Day less than 2 weeks away, Pennsylvania could decide who wins the White House. But to win those key delegates, both former President Trump and Vice President Harris may need support from Hispanic voters. According to the UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Institute, there are nearly 580,000 Latino voters in Pennsylvania. And according to a new poll, 66% of them say they will certainly vote in this year's election. Another 17% say they will probably vote. Let's bring in CBS News political director Finn Gomez. Finn, great to see you.
Hey,
let's get right into it.
Yeah.
So we know that in Pennsylvania, I mean, every vote counts, right?
And crucial.
What does this poll say about support for Trump and Harris among Latino voters there, and the gap that, between them that is big enough potentially to decide this state?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go back to that first poll that we showed, that first graphic that we showed, there are 580,000 eligible Latino voters in Pennsylvania. Primarily, about half of the population are in this center part of the state called the 222 corridor, or the Latino corridor. That's like Allentown, Reading, and Lancaster as well. And that's it. You've seen the interest levels big because you've seen both campaigns campaign there. Doug Emhoff has been there several times. Of course, the husband and the second gentleman, husband of Harris, Tim Walz, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump is going back there this weekend, just showing the importance of the Latino vote there. 580,000 eligible voters, right? That is nearly 7 times as much as the margin of victory for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Right now, the Trump campaign feels that the Latino men especially are more up for grabs in Pennsylvania. While the Harris campaign, just like we're seeing on a national level and across the battleground states, the gender gap, they're really maximizing their effort with Latinas, especially on Roe. And as one Democratic operative told CBS, it's essentially bros versus Rose, essentially, is how he coined it. And that's what we're seeing in Pennsylvania.
Well, obviously, anytime we talk about a voting bloc, we recognize that they're not a monolith. But are there issues other than reproductive rights that are driving this group?
Absolutely. And the top issue is cost of things and inflation, right? If you look at the dynamic, the demographic of the Latino vote, this issue is not only it's a top issue across the country, right? But it is a big issue with Latino voters, especially in Pennsylvania. These are mainly a lot of small business owners, small business entrepreneurs. About 40% of startups that have been launched since 2019 are made up of Latino owners, right? Latino small business owners. And that's what you're seeing here. So the one thing, if you look at the data, the one thing about the Latino male voter, Ouija, in Pennsylvania is they don't really get mobilized a lot to vote to the polls. So that's one thing where Latinas, especially in 22, if you look at that really tight Senate race between Fetterman and McCormick, the Fetterman won. The top issue there was abortion rights.
So the bottom line, Finn, is that they could decide Pennsylvania.
They could decide. I mean, yeah, they absolutely could. Again, traditionally, you think of Latino voters in the Southwest battleground states of Arizona and Nevada, but this is an hour and a half from where we are now, right? Wow. This is in the battleground state of Pennsylvania.
And we will be watching it very, very closely.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Finn.
Thanks,
Weege.
Almost 30 million early ballots have already been cast. Ahead, what do those numbers mean for the candidates? Our political panel will weigh in. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7. That is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are just 12 days out from Election Day, so what is the vice president's strategy over the coming days? Mitch Landrieu joins me now to talk about just that. He is the co-chair of the Harris-Walz campaign, also formerly served as the mayor of New Orleans and the lieutenant governor of Louisiana. Lieutenant Governor, it is great to see you. We are going to talk about how the stars are out tonight for Vice President Harris, but let me just say you are the MVP. Thank you for sticking around. We had some breaking news on the Menendez brothers.
No problem.
But we so appreciate you making more time for us tonight.
No problem. Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
All right, so in addition to the boss, Springsteen, Spike Lee, Tyler Perry, Samuel L. Jackson, we now know that Beyonce is joining the vice president in Texas. Now, it's no surprise that those celebrities are supporting the Democratic ticket, but I want to talk about why now? Why are you guys rolling them all out tonight, 12 days out? What do you think they can do for you?
Well, I can't confirm nor deny that Beyonce is going to be in Texas tomorrow, but if she is, I'm gonna find a way to see Queen Bee because I'm a huge fan. Listen, this is at this point in time, it's all about getting out the vote. It's all about making sure that everybody gets to the polls and everybody understands how critical this election will be. As I have said many times, as you know, Kamala Harris was a prosecutor. There's only one jury that counts now, and that's the American people. And they have a choice to make about which direction they want the country to go in. And so she's making her final argument to the people of America. And next Tuesday, she will be on the ellipse, the very same exact spot where Donald Trump stood to deny the peaceful transition of power, to talk about the stark choice that the people of America have to make, one that's going to either give us a new tomorrow or going to take us back to the past, one that is going to have a guy who is an autocrat, who does not believe in democracy, or one that is going to take people's opportunity away, or one that's going to provide it for us. And that's the case that she's making. And so everybody's got to go to the polls. It's going to be a very close election. And as she has said many times, when we vote, we win.
I'm so glad that you brought that speech up for next week because, as you mentioned, it is going to be on the National Mall. That is exactly where Trump made those January 6th remarks right before the riots on the Capitol. But she's going to literally be standing in his shadow as a result of that. And, you know, I think more and more the campaign has been focused on Trump. And I wonder if you think that's the winning strategy here, because it almost seems like the case is more against Trump rather than for Vice President Harris.
Well, it's actually both and you have to do both because this election is a choice between two competing visions for America. One of them is a dark choice, and that is Donald Trump, and one of them is a choice to bring us to turn the page for a new day, and that's Kamala Harris. So you have to make both cases at the same time. She's actually going to stand in the spot. She will never stand, by the way, in Donald Trump's shadow. She's going there to prove that you run to the fire, just like she's gone to Texas to highlight the facts that when Donald Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and they took women's rights away in this country, that Texas took up Donald Trump's mantle and passed the most restrictive laws in the country for women's reproductive health and put women's lives at risk. That's why she's going to Texas tomorrow, to demonstrate that she will fight for you. And Trump that day was showing who he was going to fight for, which was the people who were trying to stop the peaceful transition of power. He wants to tell you that that was a picnic day, that nothing bad really happened that day when the American citizens saw that our democracy was under attack. 146 law enforcement officers were hurt, some were killed, and she wants to remind people what Donald Trump's vision for America is. At the same time, she is talking about hope. She's talking about opportunity. She's talking about creating a new pathway forward. She's talking about lowering people's costs, and she's talking about turning the page on the travesty that we've had since Donald Trump came down that golden elevator, and that's what she's going to talk about on Tuesday.
Last night, she also talked about the border. She talked about a lot of issues at that town hall in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. I want to play a little bit of her exchange with Anderson Cooper about the border wall.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I'm not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Lieutenant Governor, today she repeated that she does support that bipartisan border bill that includes funding for the wall. So is this a concession to Republicans, or does she think it is a tool to curb migration?
Well, first of all, it's important that we secure the border, and there are lots of different ways to secure the border. Some of that is physical, some of it is with technology. What she said last night that's so critically important is that she is not the kind of president that says it's my way or the highway. Compromise requires you to take pieces of bills that you don't like, other people take that, but you get to an answer. What she said last night that was so critically important is that she is going to find a way to fix the to-do list that has been on people's desks for a very, very long time, and that does require compromise. And that's what presidents do. The other thing she said last night that was critically important, and a massive distinction between her and Donald Trump, is that she will be a president for all of America. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is only going to be president for some America. And for people that don't agree with him, he has said time and time again, and I hope the American people hear that, if you're against him, he will punish you. If you're against him, he will withhold funds from your city and from your state. If he doesn't agree with the policy, for example, in California, he's going to withhold firefighters' funds so firefighters can't save people and their houses when they're burning. That is a distinct difference in the way that this country is going to be run, because at the end of the day, she believes in democracy, you see, and that's a major distinction between her and Donald Trump.
Mitch Landrieu, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Beyonce gets ready to stump for the Harris campaign, but do celebrities really impact the vote? Our star-studded political panel is standing by to weigh in. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time. Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation.
people looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Well, nearly 30 million voters across the country have already cast their ballots. But which party could be benefiting the most from those early numbers? Let's bring in our political panel, Jaime Moore and Aaron Perini. Jaime previously served as director to the office of the DNC chairman, and Aaron is a Republican strategist who served as the Trump 2020 campaign's press communications director. Aaron, it is great to see you again.
It's great to see you.
And Jaime, thanks so much for being right here.
Good to see you.
So, Aaron, let's start with you, because early voting tends to benefit Democrats more historically. So what is your reaction to these massive numbers so far?
Well, there are a couple of things to look at when it comes to early voting, and it's in a state-by-state basis. If you look at it in its totality right now, you are seeing that the early voting numbers are tending to skew more toward females nationally. If that remains the case, then Donald Trump's going to have to hope that a ton of guys show up on Election Day to try to close the gap there, because we're seeing that those demographics are kind of shifting that way. But also, we saw today that SLF, the Senate Leadership Fund, the McConnell-backed group, is putting up a very big I believe, $6 million buy in Nevada right now. And as we've seen in the early vote in Nevada, for a few days in a row, Republicans are outpacing Democrats on a 2-to-1 basis. So while you see that money going in there, that state is now going to become more competitive. They see a pathway forward there. Right now, it's all everybody on deck, all get out the vote everywhere. And you're going to see the money chasing from these outside groups where they think they can drive up more turnout.
And Jaime, that is also the case in Georgia, of course, where the vice president is campaigning tonight with many celebrities. So when you think about the early vote, we're seeing record-breaking numbers in that state. What do you think the campaign needs to do to keep it blue?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. In 2020 and 2016, the numbers were very high. I think this year they're going to be even higher, so people are very excited about that. When we think about Georgia, you got to think about a couple of things. So you have cities like Atlanta and Augusta, Athens, Savannah. Those are going to be very important, have been important for Democrats for a very long time. But the thing that we saw in 2020 was the suburbs. So this Cobb County, you know, looking at those, Fulton County, those counties that traditionally have been conservative have been very good to Democrats over the last two cycles. And so I think I want to look at, obviously, the city centers, but then the suburban areas and kind of see. And to Aaron's point, women are voting at a very high rate. And if I was Donald Trump, I would be afraid of that. And so we got to see how those women are voting in those suburban counties as well. That's going to be a bellwether for how this election goes.
And Aaron, you worked on the Trump campaign back in 2020. When you look at it, you know, from a wider view, how do you think that his campaign is positioned compared to 4 years ago?
I think they're well positioned. I think that they've learned from what we went through 4 years ago. 4 years ago, 2020 was such an anomaly of an election going through the pandemic. But Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles have done a really good job keeping this team and the candidate on track and on mission. I mean, they've raised a lot of money. They're competitive in these states. They're doing a Get Out the Vote program. They're working, you know, they got outside groups that are also helping try to drive up turnout. So, yes, they've also seen that the political map has changed and the calculus has changed, and that's why you're seeing resource allocation change as well. And so this is a campaign that's being well run. And for Kamala Harris, this is kind of where that detriment comes in for her. Trump had a long runway through the primary, although he wasn't very active in it. But she's had this very truncated campaign. And, you know, it's kind of a famous saying in politics, you want to try to get, you know, your first, 75% of your mistakes out in the first 25% of your campaign. Because it was so short for Kamala Harris and her campaign itself, it's been harder to do that, which is why in these closing days here, it's actually harder for her to have a concise closing message because they're trying so scattershot to get everything in place now since it was so truncated for her.
And Jaime, to Aaron's point, you know, we know that the vice president is making a speech. They're branding it as her closing message next week, her closing argument. But she hasn't had that much time to really talk about herself, and we're seeing more and more she's shifting the focus on Trump and why he is unfit, why she says he's a threat. Do you think that's what she should be doing?
I mean, I think to Aaron's point, this has been a very short campaign. I think Kamala Harris has done a very great job, and she's been a very good candidate considering the time constraints. But yes, I mean, look, She believes that Donald Trump is not the best candidate to be president, obviously, but she's got to articulate that. And so while we've got to know her over the last couple months, we want to know what's the difference between she and Donald Trump. Why does she feel like Donald Trump is such a bad actor? She called him a fascist last night. Why does she think that? And so she's got to articulate that over the next couple of days to give people an option outside of him and say, look, this is Donald Trump. He's bad, bad, bad. And this is Kamala Harris, and she can do these things that would help your life over the next 4 years.
Aaron, do you think she has time to do that?
I don't think she does. And I also think that it's an ill-advised strategy for her to decide right now that her closing argument should be Donald Trump bad. The American people are screaming and telling pollsters and telling people every day they care about the economy and they want more information, especially that very small sect of still persuadable voters, on what Kamala will do policy-wise. We know she doesn't like Donald Trump. That's not confusing to anybody. And for persuadable voters, for them, that's already baked in. People who don't like Donald Trump and aren't going to vote for him, they're already there. So her focusing her message on him instead of her, what she would believe to be a forward, optimistic message on the country, I don't think that's going to win her any more votes.
I mean, look, I don't agree with that. I think she's done a good job of putting her message out there. And I think this is a binary choice. If there were 5 candidates in the race, I would say fine. But it's between she and Donald Trump, and she's got to prove that she's the better candidate. I think she's doing that.
But she's not selling herself that way, though. All she's doing is hitting Trump and not putting enough focus on herself. Voters are telling her they want more.
And she believes that Donald Trump is dangerous, and so she's trying to articulate that as much as possible, as often as possible. Well,
we will see soon enough who has the best strategy, if it works or not. Jaime Moore and Aaron Perini, thank you so much for your time.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for us today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for October 24th, 2024. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Former President Trump looks to shore up support in Arizona and Nevada, 2 states he lost in 2020, while Vice President Harris rolls to Georgia and gets ready to roll out the red carpet for the likes of Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce. A major